in St. Louis at, I remember the street. Well, I don't remember it in Miami. Lutheran Hospital, maybe? Yeah, something like that. And South St. Louis. And I was 3 weeks late, and it was a hot day when I finally decided to emerge and whatever. And about 3-something in the afternoon, and I was blue, nice color. And eventually I turned less blue, I guess. And so it was cool. I have a great memory for that. I mean, I can't believe this, but I do remember being about 6 months old and being in the crib. And there used to be a woman who came, we lived on the second floor, and a woman would come to visit every other day or so, apparently a neighbor. I think my mother called her Marie, I don't remember that. But she used to lean over the crib and simply say, you know, here's a baby, you know, hi there. And at 6 months of age, with my mother and my grandmother sitting at the table or whatever, I simply said, hi there back. And my mom said my grandma fell off the chair practically, and I didn't stop. Actually, at 6 months, I started talking. I would say things like, this is delicious, and I remember reading, my mom kept a little journal or whatever of baby Ron, and apparently I just was a chatterbox from the very beginning. Talk, 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 talk. Haven't stopped. Just kept going. I don't know. I thought about that. I was thinking about that. How would they describe me? I think my father thought I wasn't, what is the word, tough enough or something. My dad was a pretty tough nut and, you know, Mr. Anger right away and fists and stuff. And on the other hand, I think I was very outgoing, social. I would talk to anyone. They caught me at on the telephone. I was 2 years old. I was talking to some woman, and my mother thought I was playing games. I think they probably thought I was just kind of a little bit crazy, because I'd pick up the phone, and back then you didn't have to dial much, 3 numbers or something. And sure enough, I was talking to some lady, and she said, "What a nice little boy that you have." And my mother said, "Woman, there is a person here." I guess I was just outgoing. And that's probably how they describe me. I'd get on we go downtown. My mother had to put a leash on me, because a harness, because I would just walk off and talk to anybody. I would go to anyone. And I'd get on the bus, and back then in St. Louis, black people still sat on the back of the bus. And I would run to the back of the bus and sit with the people in the back of the bus. So, you know, anyone. I would just talk to anybody. I like to talk to older people for some reason, even just as, you know, 4 or 5 year old. I guess I'd just say I was just very gregarious or outgoing. I thought about that one. I really haven't a clue. Well, no, wait, I take that back. I suspect it was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. She was into the music that I now am into, but she lived it. She lived in the 20s. She collected the recordings of the Big Spiderbecks and the Duke Ellingtons, and she still had a lot of those before I was born. She actually played them all the time, and I suspect being even inside my mom, I must have heard that music, because somehow, man, I just connected with it. Anyway, she doted on me. I was the first grandchild. So it was like, oh, wow, you know, let's spoil him as fast as we can. And then my great-grandmother, on my mother's side, she was really kind of neat, because she wasn't a conventional great-grandmother, or just a human being, actually. So it was fun. She talked about studying with yogas and yeah, and when I was a little kid, nobody else. You know, I went to school with kids who their grandmothers didn't practice yoga, or, you know, have a crush on a guy named Paramahansa Yogananda. So it was interesting, yeah. And I guess in a way my grandfather, my dad's side, because he was like Mr. Stoic. And I could feel that as a kid. He would very seldom anger, which always surprised me. My father took after my grandmother on this. And at any rate, he'd sit there and go, yeah. People talk to him, he'd go, mm-hmm, yeah. And then he'd go and get something and work out in the yard for an hour. He was just that kind of a guy. And I guess those people, really, I didn't want to go, I'll tell you that. I started kindergarten when we moved out to Afton when I was 4 or so, 4 and a half or something. And the school that I went to was 1 year old when I went to it, brand new. It's gone now, they've mowed it down. But at any rate, I just didn't want to go there at all. But I apparently, after being there like kids, I got into it and enjoyed it. I did get into trouble, but I was a smart kid. But I got into trouble anyway because I've always been a little rebellious, and I didn't like people telling me things what to do, or actually even getting on the case of other kids who I felt were being, I guess, I didn't know the words then, I just felt they were being abused. I didn't know that then. I had a friend who stuttered, and people would make terrible fun of him, and I used to get into fistfights. Me, little 6 and 7-year-old rounds out in the playground pounding the hell out of somebody who's apparently, going to slug me once, that'll be the end of it. But I just thought it was terrible that they would make fun of somebody like that. And I just kind of was into that. It just was my nature, I guess, it's part of my nature. But it wasn't anything terrible things, But I was called in the principal's office occasionally, and then that all kind of left. And as I left grade school, I sort of mellowed out a little bit, but I still didn't like people telling me things I thought were not necessarily for me or my good or anybody else's. I got in trouble with my parents once for telling a neighbor, here's this little snotty 8-year-old kid telling somebody, don't you dare, blah, blah, blah. And this woman was like, oh. I got spanked. Yeah, for mouthing off. So I guess I learned my lesson, maybe. I'm not sure. No, I didn't. No, I haven't. So, but I was a good student. I wasn't top notch, but I was there, and I liked school. So, and I liked the teachers, for the most part. And I remember almost all their names. I guess kids do. I don't know, but I really enjoyed school so much that I can tell you practically every teacher I ever had. Some of them were more memorable than others. But yeah, so yeah, I was just a brainy, snotty, bratty kid, sort of, sometimes. I wish I had the brains. Oh, still. High school, well actually we had junior high, and junior high was that stage between the grade school and whatnot, and it was supposed to be preparing you. And I suppose it did, because you just slid easily. Back then it was junior high, not middle school. And you just slid right into it. And high school was great because I was able to do more of the things I really enjoyed. Music, I was in the orchestra, played the violin, I was in the theatrical thing. I even for a little while found out I could run really fast, and so I did a lot of the job. What is that? Sprinting, that kind of thing. So yeah. I never much for team sports. I always thought competition was silly because I saw people get hysterical when they didn't do it, and I thought, well, excuse me, I'm not sure what are we doing here, Plus I became clumsy for some reason. Now, anybody can play a violin, isn't clumsy, but I just wasn't attracted to it at all. I enjoyed the running. It's probably because I could get away. If I had to, I could run away or something. I don't know, psychology there. But yeah, and I met really nice people. I still am in touch. We just had our 50th reunion, high school reunion. And I still keep in touch with one or two people. Everybody seems to think, they have to go to the reunions and things. Well, frankly, I haven't heard from it. I don't hear from those people except from one reunion to the next, except for one, maybe, or two. And I figure, I don't know that I have that much in common then, probably, with all of those people. They're all gone off and done whatever they're doing. So, I loved high school. I had a lot of friends, and wrote a play, the high school senior play, and it was a musical, and it was just a lot. I enjoyed that. I got to be a little more of, I guess, myself, and then went off to college and that kind of thing. Yeah, I was in a lot of clubs, you know, and I don't know, it just was a nice time. I learned that there was a bigger world out there, you know. Took some French and German or something. They even taught Latin and Russian when I was in school back then. So, yeah, it was a really nice place to be, I think, back then. I don't know what it's like anymore, but, you know, I don't know. Anyway, it was a great time. I liked it a lot. Wow, that's a good one, because I like just about everything. I'm not good at math, so I didn't particularly care for it. Oh, and I wasn't really good at shop. I couldn't carve a toothpick if, you know, I had to. So there was a lot of carving and working with this and that, and it wasn't my thing at all. I just never got it. But major subjects, I loved history, I loved science. I really liked all of those things. I like to read a lot, and I don't know which one was my favorite. Music, you know, I took music lessons. I had to play the violin for the orchestra, so, you know, and I wasn't very good at it. But I played it for probably 5 torturous years, or longer, actually. That's not true. I started when I was in 10, when I was 5th grade, played all the way through high school. So music was a big one, you know, and singing, the chorus, that kind of thing. In high school, we had a wonderful choral teacher, music teacher. Her name was Stoddard, Mrs. Stoddard. And I just liked her from the start, because she was a no-nonsense, but we're going to enjoy this kind of person. And she made it work, and I really enjoyed that. Had a teacher who taught drama. For some reason, I can't remember his name. I usually remember that. Someone else. At any rate. And then I enjoyed the French teacher. She'd never gone to France. She was from Kansas. But somehow, you know, she was teaching it. And I always thought she was like stood out, because I always thought she was painted. She wore so much makeup. And I thought, you know, so I'd look up once in a while, okay, you know. But there were other people, the English teachers. I enjoyed all but one of them, who I took a great dislike to, because she treated people like they were, she had no regard for your feelings, I think. And she didn't, I don't know how she ever became a teacher. I mean, she was good at what she did, but her personality and mine just grated, and I just didn't want anything to do with her. So it kind of turned me off a little bit. But then, you know, that was life. And so I guess I liked all of them. I loved history. I had a wonderful teacher named Mr. Totto. I don't know his background, but it turns out later on, when I was out of school, he must have found my name in a phone book or something. And he called me and said, "Are you the Ron Youngman?" And I said, "Do you still listen to those old tunes?" Because everybody knew I loved the old music. And he said, "Do you have any Russ Columbo records?" And I went, "Well, I don't know." So that was kind of fun, because he loved that period of music. Had no clue when I was in school. You know, you miss really neat things when you're, at any rate, it was school. Okay, so yeah, a lot of fun. Enjoyed the teachers, and for the most part. I liked everything all the kids did. So it was like, I remember going to see in high school the Beach Boys, and they were just brand new. I remember meeting Bill Haley and the Comets, and actually meeting them. There were some other names, for some reason I can see faces, but I can't think of them. It was a rock and roll time, and so I remember Carl Perkins. I met Carl Perkins, and I met some other people who'd actually come to St. Louis to promote their things on the TV shows back then. And I liked to dance so much. I had a dance partner, and she and I would go to these televised St. Louis hops, or whatever they called them back then. And I met a lot of the musicians who came through St. Louis. That's all. My favorite, I must confess, I never liked Elvis Presley, but I don't know why. I just never did. But I liked when the Beatles finally came in. I was in heaven. I just somehow enjoyed their music 100 million times better. Didn't care much for the Rolling Stones, but they were there too. But I liked like the Diamonds, you know, the whatever that was. I just love stuff like that. God, there were so many. Roy Hamilton's, all the pop stuff for the kids. I love Bobby Darin, you know, all of those people. I wish I could remember more of their names. I really enjoyed a little bit of the Detroit, the Detroit people when they first came out, like
Motown.
Yeah, who were the women groups that were big?
The Supremes.
The Supremes. Oh, that's awful. I can't think of their names. Anyway, yeah. So I was lucky to meet a lot of rock and roll people who came through, and enjoyed that. But in the back of all that, I was, from the time could remember, listening also to the jazz and the music of the 20s and whatever, and was starting to collect those 78s. And just you know, I would go to the book fairs in St. Louis, and they had them at the Famous and Bar, the ones I remember. And there would be, people were throwing away all their 78s. They didn't need them, they had stereo. So out goes all the 78s. Oh my God, you know, you can get them for a nickel or a dime. And I know one time I came home, I had 300 or 400 records that we bought, you know, at the book fair. At any rate, so I had all that going on with Duke Ellington and all those people, and with the rock and roll that was part of my generation. Yeah. So I really still like, I think best, the Beach Boys. Oddly enough, they're happy and joyous and just sort of escape, and Jan and Dean and all that Beach Boys stuff. You know. Good question. Yes, college. Yes, subject. Oh God. I went to 3 different schools. I started at Mizzou and couldn't stand it. It was just deplorable. I felt like, you know, somebody just throwing me out in no man's land, and nobody was there. And it was, I didn't care for it. So then I went some other place. But I finally wound up at the school I really liked, which was Webster. It was then called Webster College back then. And it's now Webster University and all over the world, apparently. But when I started, I was one of 7 male students who they were just opened it up, and it was still a Catholic-run school, parochial school, the Sisters of Loretto, and all of a sudden there was revolution, and they decided that they'd had it with whatever, and off went the nuns' habits, on came the Chanel tailored suits. And the whole school just sort of like went boom, and I was like a whole new age. I loved it. I met people I still know all these years later, and people that I just had a wonderful time. My subject finally was English, and I decided maybe it would be nice to teach. I don't know. I don't think I ever decided on a career. I just fell into it. Honest. And I enjoyed teaching, and I graduated then, you know, with I guess it's a BA or something or the other, had to do with the English language. But I also sort of had a minor in English, minor in music, and in history. So I just got all tied up with a lot of things. I couldn't let go of all of it. I just wanted to do all of it. As a matter of fact, I was asked to be in the department when I went to Missouri University of the history department, because out of 1,500 students, I'm not bragging, because if I told you how I don't know how I did this, seriously, out of 1,500 students I was number 4 on the exams and tests and things, and frankly, it had to be a fluke. There was no way in hell I had that much knowledge about what was going on. I really don't know how that happened. I'm not being modest. I didn't have no clue. I know I crammed all night. I don't know. I have no clue. But I loved history, and I still do. So. So that's what I did. I graduated with a BA in English. I got my teaching certificate. I taught at Ladue. What is that called out there, this high school? Ladue High School. Is that it, Ladue High School? Yeah, maybe that's it. And then I went on to into St. Louis and worked there at Southwest High School. I'd party more. Yeah, and I would also book it more. I would just have ramped up the whole thing on both ends, because the party stuff made my friends for life, lifetime of friends. And actually, the booking, the ramping up with the book, studying real hard, I met a lot of really wonderful nuns who taught with a fervor I'd not encountered before. And it was kind of a wonderful thing. They were very interested in each person, and that was really nice, and I enjoyed that. And people I will never forget. They were really neat people. So. No best job. I liked them. I liked it all. And if it had to do with the place I was in, it really hadn't to do with teaching so much as the environment of there being more things to do. St. Louis. I think teaching in St. Louis. I taught at Southwest and went to, here comes a brainy moment. I went from South St. Louis, which is basically a white culture, to North St. Louis, which was not. And I taught in an all-black high school in North St. Louis, whose name, for the life of me, just went out of my head. Age is delightful. And I really enjoyed that a lot too, because I grew up in white South St. Louis. But interestingly enough, I never thought about people. I mean, color is color. You see somebody who's black and you're white, you think, well, they're black and I'm white. But it never occurred to me that made a difference in person and who you were and all that. So, like I said, when I was a little kid, I just run up to people. I was a people person. And I really learned a lot when I went to teach up in North St. Louis. That's crazy. The man was a senator during the Civil War, and they named the school after him. Well, I'm having a moment, so I'm not going to play with that. But I liked it because in St. Louis, you had everything. You have the theater, you had concerts, you could go to the show, you could see a dozen different movies here and there. You could pick up on groups. I used to love to go down to Gaslight Square when it was alive. And I met people down there, Barbra Streisand and the Smothers Brothers. And I actually worked, when I was in college, worked down there, volunteered for what was then KDNA. And it was a public open radio thing. And I'd take a bundle of my records, 78s, and go down. And one of my college friends, Leo Guglielcello, great pizza. That's not a stereotype. He just made great pizza. And he was a great person. He would run the turntable, and he'd put the stuff on, and I'd talk about it. At any rate, yeah, that was just what I liked about St. Louis. There were all these interesting spots and places you could go and food you could eat. I mean, I like German food, but there's a point. And it was grand. I just loved it. So, of all the places I taught in, because of that, I think it was St. Louis. But I like here. When I taught here, I taught out here, and I liked here because it was, I don't know, I liked the quiet. I liked the country. I liked the air and the whatever, even though I lived in front of the railroad track. I just like those moments when you can walk through the woods and out in the fields and whatever. It's just wonderful. Now I'm getting antsy to go back where there's more stimuli, and if I could, I think I'd, best of both possible worlds. Who knows, you know. Would be nice if we had transportation in America where you could actually get on the train and go someplace and get off and come back at a real decent hour. But that doesn't happen in America because we don't do that. So, I didn't choose it, my career. I just fell into it. If there's anything I would have done differently, I don't know. I didn't. So, I don't know. I would have stood up more to people. Yeah. I would have stood up more to authority, you know, the political ones, which I finally did, I guess, in some ways. But then, you know, you stumble over your own feet anyway, so there you have it. And, no, I don't, life goes on. I have no idea. I've always been a little rebel, a little shit disturber. And gently, not always big, you know, but rebellious moment. I guess just telling people who I thought were stomping on me anywhere, anytime, not a moment, but get off. Get off. If that makes you happy, that's nice. It doesn't make me happy, and I don't see how it could possibly make anybody else feel like they could be happy. So this little dictatorship thing you got going for yourself, you know, just, I'm not interested in it. So I remember once telling a superintendent who had told me, if we don't like you, we'll get rid of you. I thought, well, you know, that's a two-way street, because if I don't like you, I'm sure the hell not going to hang around this attitude. So that was an interesting moment. I got hired anyway. Procrastination. I'm extremely good at procrastination. I could probably procrastinate myself right out of my life if I was, you know, didn't get desperate. Remember, you're alive, you want to stay that way? Gee, say that again.
What are you really good at?
Oh, good at. I don't know. I like being with people, so I think I'm good with, that's a stupid thing to say almost, but I like being with people, so if that's something I'm good at, you know, I think it's good to entertain. I guess I'm good at that. I like entertaining, if we can call it that. Yeah, I like singing songs and having people enjoy it, or, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And what are you bad at that you'd like to be good at?
Procrastinating. Yeah. If I had my druthers, I would quit putting things off and just do it. I've gotten better at it, but not really good. And, oh, maybe money. I can't add or subtract, and consequently, I don't realize when people are screwing me or taking things away, or I'm doing it to myself. So, had I had any notion of what the world was really like, I don't know how I could have missed it. I've been in it a long time. I would have done something more about being a little more financially alert. Let's call it that. Other than that, yeah, what the heck. That's a really good one. I have so many. And recently, I can't tell you who my favorite entertainer is. I don't listen to anybody much. I don't go anywhere to see people entertaining. The new music stuff isn't something I like. I mean, I know there are different genres still going on, but nothing has attracted my attention, and I have to go back, and there are dozens from the past. You know, movie stars from the silver screen kind of thing, and singers from that era, Crosby's, and oh gosh, and people that aren't remembered anymore, Billy Murray's, I like Alice Faye, I like Ethel Merman, I like stars, I guess, of what I'll call, and have called America's golden age of the Renaissance and Harlem kind of thing, that age, the 20s, 30s, in some ways. I like that era, and the people who were there, pretty much, the Fred Astaire's and the Jim. I like entertainment. I like people who help you, who lift you. a bit, and take you out of maybe your woe or yourself, and not people who harp on it so much, which means I really got to quit talking about politics. But yeah. Oh, please. Well, I have a lot of time, and what do I like? I don't know. It's like I'm getting started again in some ways. Some things just look like they're ending, and like I need to let things begin, sort of again. So it's like a new era a little bit. Yeah, I'm doing things I haven't done before, and working at things, trying to get a little kind of a career going again. I like that. That's nice. I just wish I felt more certain of things, but who knows? When I was a kid, my grandfather had his job for 40, 50 years at the same place. That kind of certainty doesn't exist. And when you retire, as I have, without, some kind of a big cushion, you keep thinking, well, what am I going to do, And then things do happen, and you think, oh, well, this is okay. And so I'm just going with the flow again, and yeah, I like that. That's a good thing. I'd say the last couple of presidential elections and the things that have been happening with our once upon a time democracy. I'm not going to get political there. We don't have a democracy, and you can go and look that up. We now have a Patriot Act, and I think that's very significant. We have an NDAA. We have laws that say you can't get too close to politicians because they don't want you close to them, and I find that's interesting. I wonder where we're going with it. But I think what's going to trump all the political baloney is probably Mother Nature. And so I'm not going to get too excited about the politics because I don't think it's going to mean anything pretty soon. I'm not saying we're all going to die in some crazy thing, but I think what's going to happen is going to be politically untenable. People won't be able to count on anyone much, I think, if things get crazy with the climate, and geez, the last day we've had huge earthquakes again, and the weather, and there's 3 feet of water in St. Mark's Square today, and huge storms and things. That's what's gonna maybe, But politically, I would say the loss of a democracy. We've lost our democracy, and no one seems to care much. I mean, if I lost my best friend out in the woods, I'd go looking, but no one seems to be looking for their freedom. So I guess they think they have it. I don't know. To me, that's a big one. When you lose your habeas corpus and you lose your rights that way, and and then you see a Supreme Court bought and paid by mega corporations to do things that are not for people, for the interest of the people at all. You wonder why they're still sitting there. In another age and another time, maybe in 1776 or so, people would have yanked them off their benches and said, no, you don't belong there, and you have no right to do what you're doing. But I'm not a big violent guy, and I'm not going to run out and do that. I figure, the greatest oaks will fall, and they may take the rest of the woods with them. But there you have it. So there. Yeah, we're living in it. I think right now is the big political incredibleness. I think it's the end of the empire, or the beginning of something that's not going to make it as an empire. We can't sustain it as a country, or as a people. We just don't have that long attention span. When everything's done in little bites, Happiness is waking up in the morning. There was a little thing I used in the show and that I did for Oktoberfest, and the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, when you're past 60 and you wake up in the morning, you don't have aches and pains, you're dead. So just be nice, with hello, I'm awake. It's raining and pouring outside, but hey, it's there, and I'm here to see it and all that. Happiness is just being around sometimes like-minded people, people you have an interest with or in, and also being comfortable, being, oh God, there's an awful lot to happiness. There really is. I guess it's just being, well, what's content? I don't know. You know, content that you have a place to be, a place to live, you have friends, some family maybe, if that's it, you know. You have an interest, a hobby, something you do that makes you feel a little more than who you are, you know, or beyond yourself, that kind of thing. Just helping people. I like to entertain people. I like to, hopefully they'll smile or something will happen. I think that's why I like my music so much, because I can go out to senior citizens and take the music that they knew as young people and maybe talk about things that were going on and maybe joke a little and bring them. I see people, when I entertain, I see them, you know, sometimes go off and they're not asleep, they're just remembering something, you know, and they'll smile a little bit, and when they come up to me they say, oh wow, I haven't heard that song in, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and I really just, that was nice, I remembered something. And that makes me feel good. It's not me, it's the music, it's whatever it was, but it's nice to be part of that. You know, you feel like you're part of something that's fun, happy. I haven't the foggiest notion. I don't know. Do people need to be remembered? I don't know. I don't remember who lived 2,000 years ago in Rome. I don't remember anybody then much. We know the big guys because they smashed everything around and plotted and pleaded and, you know, did whatever it is that's supposed to make them important. I don't think it's important to be remembered necessarily. Maybe if somebody would, my name is mentioned and they smile, maybe that's okay, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter to me that I'm remembered at all. I know people I remember. I don't know if I want to be, if I can translate that into how I want people to remember me at all. I know people because of their smile or something they said or something they did or a hug or just a wonderful song or a tune or, geez, I don't know. But I think there's so many things, you know, that everybody will remember you for different things anyway. So whatever it is, you know. I thought about that one. I have thought about that. The most lovely thing I've ever seen. I must say, it's going to have to be a nature thing. And as a matter of fact, 2 nights ago, I was out walking in the field, and I just happened to look up, and I saw one of the most beautiful sunsets I think I'd ever seen in my life. The clouds were actually looked like they were burnished. They looked like gold. And there was this azure sky behind it, and then on the clouds drifting away from the gold, there were these hues of pinks, and I mean, it was just astonishing. I actually stared at it for a long time, and I think it's in nature mostly. One thing I think, when I was in China, I taught in China for a little bit, my apartment was, and behind my apartment window was a school, and it was for little bitty kids, and I think, I don't know if it's the loveliest thing I've ever seen, but the loveliest thing I ever heard was to hear all these little kids laughing. It was amazing to hear little bitty kids laughing, because you don't know what they're laughing at, but the sound of it's like rippling, you know, it just ripples, and it's just delightful. So I didn't see it, but I heard it. Yeah. To humanity, wake up. Put a little more kindness in your life, and don't let people tell you what to think, how to believe, or any of the other garbage that gets heaped on humanity that actually is more of a prison than a freedom. Be yourself. Don't let anyone convince you that you cannot succeed by being yourself and not their version of you. Be who you are, and don't take anything for granted. Doubt everything, and get out there and maybe make the world a little more joyous than something that often resembles like some kind of a prison, a trap. Don't let people pull you into that, because there are people who love that. They like, misery likes company.